Hello and welcome to Two Crones and a Microphone. I am Linda,
And I am Betty.
and our friend Sally is off on a well-deserved trip, and we will welcome her back for the next podcast. We want to invite you to pour a cup, tune in, get grounded. We are offering stories, rituals, and real life wisdom from three seasoned crones. Whether you're seeking a deeper connection to the world around you or just need a good dose of perspective, you are in the right place. Pour a cup of something warm, pull up a chair, and settle in. It's time for real talk about how we live, how we heal, and how we show up when the world feels like it's on fire. So, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We also want to invite you to subscribe with us on social media. We're building something both ancient and new, one story, one podcast at a time. The courage to choose love over fear, even in the face of what feels like chaos and the unknown. Betty, would you like to talk about our sponsor?
I absolutely would. And of course, that is the Minerva Educational and Wellness Treatment Center. Our website is minervaed.com. And that's really kind of like our sister business with Two Crones and a Microphone.
You
And with
bet.
Minerva, we offer classes online and we offer classes on site here in the Pocono Mountains. We have a beautiful, beautiful area here, and it just nourishes us and serves to help us offer up these wonderful classes. Last night we had a drumming circle that was awesome, absolutely awesome. Our friend from Arizona, Dove, who we have done an interview with. If you want to get to know her better, just go to our YouTube site or to one of our podcast platforms and look for her interview. She conducted a wonderful drumming circle. It was really a lot of fun. So, that being said, let us go forward and talk about our earth wisdom. This is what we're going to be talking about today, how to deal with the earth. It's spring up here, it's after Memorial Day, and we're all running out to put our plants in the ground because for us to get frost at this time of the year would be highly unlikely. So even though it's still a little bit cool, it's the perfect time to put everything in.
It is core planting season here. Agreed. Yeah. We've been taking a deep dive into the element of earth. So, Betty, I look forward to hearing what you have to say about sacred gardening and ways to speak about the earth.
You know, we interviewed Mihaela Fry on our last podcast, and Mihaela is an
Oh,
absolutely awesome woman. And
yes.
she shared her stories about her communication with mountains, trees, the unseen realms, right? All those non human beings and other earth energies. And we all agree that conversation with Mihaela always opens the door for us to share more direct methods of communication with the earth beneath our feet. I mean, she's been doing this for years and years,
Yes.
and has taught us many ways to communicate with the mother, who is our earth, and all the beings who live on it. We're talking about not just the four-leggeds and those that slither and those that fly, but also the unseen realm of the fairies that live here. I have a ton of those, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I
Linda,
look forward to that too. I know we all have stories to share about
yeah.
those. And we are going to be speaking as well about the trees and their ability to communicate through their root systems and branching systems, and how we suggest to communicate with the spirit of various plants through just a few small processes and meditations. And we think of this as being our way to help co create with our dear earth. And There are a lot of ways to do this that are out there, but we're going to call out a couple of ways that we found to be very pragmatic and useful. It's called plant spirit communication and co-creation with the earth, and it's based on a type of conversation it's possible to have with the earth, with the plants, with the rocks, with the beings. And it begins like any friendship. It begins to build a relationship that begins to go like this, weave back and forth in a figure eight. And for me, at least, it often involves singing or moving with the earth energies. So, singing with the birds, with the chipmunks, the trees around me, the rocks or stones, herbs and flowers. And this is sort of standard for me these days, even though at first I might have felt a little awkward about singing in front of a tree or in front of anything. Now it brings me great joy, and I feel like we do have real communication based on that. And in fact, I just want to relay the other night I had a dream where I was singing a sort of jazzy phrase, do, 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 do. And then suddenly in the dream, a bunch of other humans started singing in harmony, and then the rocks and the trees and the sky and the earth all added their own harmonic phrasing. It was beautiful. What a nice dream to wake up with.
We were drumming last night too, and
Yeah.
I was, I could feel the energies just moving out and blessing the air, the land that we're on. With the building where Minerva is located, surrounded by trees and rocks and a lot of wildlife, and you could feel them responding to the heartbeat of the drum. It was just lovely. Um, as Mihaela said, when we're healing Mother Earth on an energetic level, we all do believe that the energetic and the physical are linked. You really can't have one without the other, and you can't change one without affecting the other. Each one of us, and that would be Linda, myself, and Sally in particular, we work and play with the nature spirits, the divas, and we co-create with them as part of our daily practices. And we know there are many other people out of this circle doing the same thing that we're doing. For example, Sally and I just taught a class on sacred planting. All right, how to prepare the ground for your different herbs that you might be putting in, or perhaps your tomatoes or your potatoes or whatever you're planting for food or herbs. And it's simple. It's really simple. You center, you ground, smudge yourself, and your earth that you're going to be used for your gardening, or in my case, it's my raised bed garden.
Yes.
Put crystals, clean crystals, make sure you clean them, in the four directions. Or if you don't resonate with using crystals, you can just call in the four angels and their directions and locate the center of the garden. And when you call the four directions, the earth below and the sky above, they feed the garden. They feed the garden. If you want more information on this, as a gift for those who subscribe to our podcast, we have done a PDF that we'll be happy to send you so that you can follow the steps that we use. It's a little more defined on what we did in the class. But if you follow those steps, I promise you, you are going to have a magnificent garden, because you're calling in all those elements that we're talking about, and you're calling in the energetics of the land to work with you. I always put my herbs in a raised bed garden because out back, I have a plethora of bunnies who serve many, many animals out there. They're food for the hawks and the eagle that comes around, and they eat well. They make sure they eat well, so they're nice and plump and fat. And and the owl. So it's a circle of life, right? So I make sure that my herbs that I need for myself, I
Right.
plant inside. It's just more practical. But the outside, I have flowers. I have maybe some mint because no matter how much mint you put out there, it'll get eaten, but there's so much that it just proliferates. Mint is like hardy as anything, right? Or
It's
my
well
lemon
known.
balm. Right.
Mm,
It just keeps going, keeps
yeah.
going.
Both of them do. So I want to double back with what you said about sponsoring because, on our website, twocronesandamicrophone.com, we do have a subscribe button and a support button. And if you click on the support button, we'd like to offer you, even if you make a small donation every month, we want to offer you certain giveaways or gifts that take you deeper into the work that we've experience that we'd like to share with you. And it's truly a beautiful handout that takes you step by step through gardening in a sacred manner. And what better timing? Of course, you can start a garden inside too in the middle of winter, and these rules would
Yeah,
still apply.
they do.
But for the spring and for planting season, we think it's a wonderful offering. So we want to invite you. And you know what? The other piece is you mentioned smudging, self and the
Hmm.
earth. Betty has a wonderful piece that she did that's a reel up on Facebook and Instagram on our social media sites, Two Crones and a Microphone, that takes you step by step in just a minute's time through the ways that we like to smudge. And so it offers a lot of practical tips. I just re-reviewed it last night. It was so well done.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to do. It really was. So to get back to our garden,
Yes.
one of the things that I do is, of course, I have to keep it watered, particularly after you first put it in, right? And I use moon water. What is moon water? Moon water is water that you put out at the different phases of the moon. So depending on what you want, and just put it outside, let it sit there for a couple of, I usually let it go for a couple of evenings. And then I've got this wonderful water that has captured the energetics of the moon. And that can be used for many things. I'm not going to go into that now, but I do use that for watering my garden. I may put a little 5-flower essence in there. So, because the plants, they're living beings. They get a little stressed when you first put them in particular,
That's
because
right.
they're out of their natural habitat. And the 5-flower essence just helps to, calm them down nicely so that they
Now,
will grow. And I will put up pictures of my raised bed garden. And I'll also put a picture up of when we did the class, because we were indoors, we put our seeds. I use Tulsi because, of course, if you've heard or the podcast, I'm a big fan of Tulsi. I put Tulsi seeds in this little pot that's you can put right into the earth and it'll be absorbed, and they're sprouting. But that's because I talk to them. I talk to them, I water them, I play music for them. It's in my kitchen where I'm able to pipe some music in, some lovely music. And they're coming along really nice. It's so exciting to watch that, isn't it? After this
it's
winter when
wonderful.
things are so icy
Yes.
and snowy, and to watch these little green shoots coming up, it just makes my heart so happy.
I
Um,
agree. I have something that's happening outside my front door that was totally unexpected but lovely. On the next, in the next yard over from mine, there's a community raised bed garden that's getting
oh,
established, and it has three big containers, and they're going to be co-creating community offerings that'll be given over to the town's food bank. And so there's a young woman, young by my standards, young woman here who's a wonderful gardener, and I've already spoken with her. And I am so excited to be able to share the kind of experience that we're talking about and to help grow food for people who might need it. It's going to be really, really interesting to watch as
oh,
everything progresses.
great. Are you
Already,
growing pumpkins?
you just took the words out of my mouth
My favorite.
because she had seedlings in there. And I said, "Oh, those look like gourds of some kind. What are they?" And she said, "Oh, they're pumpkins." And I went,
Yay.
"Oh, of course they are." I said, "Well, good, because I've been talking with them." And she said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I talk to plants all the time. I was trained as an herbalist, among other things." And she started to grin and she said, "Yeah, well, so do I." And so,
Oh,
you know,
good.
I think we're going to have a nice relationship here. We'll see as it progresses.
Linda, can you take some pictures and we can put them up
Oh, that's a great idea.
on the website, and we can put them up
Sure,
on our Facebook and Instagram pages, and people can
sure.
watch as everything's unfolding. I think that would be
Great idea.
lovely.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to me that, and it's a community effort. It's designed for both children and adults to come and to help and, make sure the plants are growing well and all this other stuff. It's going to be so, so wonderful to watch. And that kind of leads into we're talking to the plants, and we've already spoken about that, but what about listening? What about listening to the earth? And for me at least, whenever I listen, I start with trying to ground, center, and open my heart because there are so many ways to listen. Sometimes I'll hear a message from a tree, a lovely tree, for example, with my ears. How does that happen? Well, because a wind will kick up and suddenly the trees are rustling and it's going like that, and it really gets my attention. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but sometimes just one branch will be waving as if to say hello, hello, and you just pay attention, and I think you're going to see some of the same response is the way I think of it. And so sometimes it's physical hearing. Other times it may be an emotional sense of belonging or caring or just an appreciation of each other. Other times, from time to time, if it's a tree of my long relationship, sometimes I'll have pictures pop up in my mind, literal pictures of a creature. Or one time on my beloved grandmother's property, there was a tree that I always loved as a child. I was able to go back and visit with that tree as a fully grown adult with my daughter with me. And I remembered the tree, and I went up and just was able to touch it and say, "Thank you so much. You meant so much to me growing up." The tree sent me a picture of me as a tiny child
Oh,
playing alongside its roots and branches. And I was stunned. I burst into tears. So we have the capacity, and the beings, the trees and the beings have the capacity to witness us and we them. Well, there's speaking of magic, because that is a form of magic to me. There's a wonderful quote by Starhawk. Starhawk is one of the premier environmentalists and ecological warriors of our time. And she says, "We need the discipline of magic, of consciousness changing, in order to hear and understand what the earth is saying to us. And listening to the earth, doing the rituals or caring, whatever you want to think of them as, the land asks us for, giving back what we are asked for will also bring us healing, expanded awareness, and intensified life." So that's a long quote, but I hope it's meaningful. It's about that co-creation we were just talking about. It's about deep listening. That's something we've talked about a few times on our podcast. We want to deeply listen with our open consciousness, including our intuition, our intellect, our ability to discern, and of course, our imagination, because that is part of who we are too.
that is absolutely profound. And I fear that we're losing some of that today because with the advent of the phone, social media, you can stay
Yeah.
connected all the time. We
Yeah.
don't sit and listen. We don't take that time because you have a few extra minutes. You're like, oh, let me check my Facebook or let me check, whatever social media platform you're using. And there's new
Yeah.
ones popping up every day.
Yeah.
So we don't have time to just key in to what plants we might be drawn to, or
Right.
what trees or the nature beings. I've got a lot of ferns around the property, and according to Mihaela, and I believe she's telling the truth, the little
Hmm.
fairies live out there, and I think they do. So
Oh,
it gives
yes.
me the opportunity to communicate with them and see what they want to show me, or, you know, they may bless me with a little something here and there. It's absolutely amazing what you find out when you take the time to sit and listen or just stand there.
Yeah.
Put your hand on that tree and
Yeah.
see what it wants to communicate to you, just like it did with you, Linda. It
Yeah.
showed you that picture of you when you were a little child. That is so beautiful. It really isn't. It brings me back to, when I lived in Brooklyn, when I grew up, we had
Yes.
this huge backyard, highly unusual for Brooklyn, right? But
Uh-huh.
but we did have trees all over the place. The old tree grows in Brooklyn. It's true.
Yeah.
We did have a lot of trees. And I
Nice.
was always drawn to those trees and admiring their beauty, admiring how strong they were standing there.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's something that kids today may be missing, so it might be, we may want to try and introduce them to a little bit of this.
Mhm.
Growing up as children, we were both out all the time. You were
All the
always
time.
out,
Yep.
not anymore, right?
Not necessary.
So
Yeah.
I'm asking you to pay attention to what tree or plant you're drawn to. When I plant my garden, my herbal garden, I
Hmm.
listen to my body and see what my body is telling me. What do I need now? You know,
Yes.
I always need rosemary. I always plant that. Lemon balm is a staple. I need
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Mint, of course, my Tulsi, but there may be something else thrown in there that I'm kind of surprised at. So
Sure.
again, it's just your body communicating. I'll tell you, our next podcast, we're going to be talking about Hildegard of Bingen, Saint Hildegard of Bingen. She was an amazing woman. You'll find out all about her when you listen to the next podcast. She's a saint. Just became a saint within the past 10 years, and
Huh.
she lived in like 10, I don't know, 70 or something. I don't remember the year she was born, but can you imagine all those years ago, right? And she wrote about this, exactly what we're talking about today, how important it is to communicate with the earth and the beings on the earth, because we're all intertwined. She wrote this. We're not independent of each other. And the earth isn't something that we use just to nourish ourselves, right? It's all part of that communication. Like when I pray before my meals, I always thank the animals that have given their life to nourish us, the
Yes.
plants. I
Yes.
mean, it's just honoring them. It's just honoring them. So I
Yeah.
urge you to plug into our next podcast, because I think you're going to be amazed at who she was. Absolutely.
I want to double back on what you just said about social media because there are a lot of different ways to tell stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stories on social media are really inspirational, but some of them are designed to just keep us stirred up. And we
Yeah.
think that being grounded and centered and reasonably contented in one's body, mind, spirit, and sort of general essence is one of the gifts of being a human being here. And so we want to encourage you to listen more to the long story and the embedded story about how we fit in here on the earth and what place we hold here and how we express with each other and listen to each other in order to organize maybe our own thoughts and desires about things.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we do that. Um, you were talking about communication, how important it is.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is known for having a lot of trees, and that wasn't always the case. They actually deforested the place, I guess, the end of the 18th century or so,
Yeah.
and then they built it back up.
Yeah.
Recently, and I believe I mentioned this, we had to take down our ash trees, and there were a lot of ash
Mm-hmm.
trees on this property, and
Mm-hmm.
it broke my heart.
Oh,
It was just terrible that we had to take down so many trees, but they were falling down. I had Luna out one
yeah.
morning. We went for a little morning walk, and I hear this huge crash. And I looked over, and it was in the woods, thank God. And the tree had come down. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I better get somebody in here that will take down
Yeah.
the trees that are in a dangerous spot. However, I went to every one of those trees that we had to take down. And I did offering as we were taught by Oshana. I
Good.
thanked the tree. I explained to it why it had to come down. And it, as sad as it was, the
Yeah.
tree understood because the tree was eaten by the emerald ash borer
Yeah.
and it wasn't healthy any longer. And it knew it had lived its life out. And also by doing that kind of offering and explaining to it why it had to come down, they all came down very easily. Nobody was hurt.
Good.
Ash trees, the guys who take trees down, I know there's a name for them, but I can't think of it right now.
Arborists.
That's it. They really don't like taking down the ash tree because that tree is known for breaking in the middle, right?
Mm.
And it can kill you actually. And that we've had instances of that happening. So it's not their favorite tree to take down, believe me. But all my trees came down, and there were a significant number of them came down easily. There was no problems. And I really believe that because they understood why they had to come down, that made the difference.
I'm going to hark back to what Mihaela said too on our last podcast. And I loved this because she was talking about the same concept about when trees come down. She said that trees know when they're not healthy.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, they will communicate that to the other trees, both chemically through the roots and through the sky system. Their branches, they will communicate and they'll sort of seal themselves off, but they're not happy being in a disease state either. And she had an interesting concept, almost like the sort of oversoul of the ash tree. And she said, you know, especially if it's explained to them that you're coming down with care and this is why, that they cooperate and also will sort of move to a different healthy ash environment and still be able to help thrive
Mm-hmm.
them thrive. It was just such an interesting concept. We'll be posting several tree related books because in the last 8 to 10 years there's been a lot of research that's come out that talks about trees, the ways they communicate, the ways they help the environment, and the mycelial ground that they send messages through, both electronically and chemically. It's so fascinating. It's really opened up, I think, our perception. Some of these are on the New York Times bestseller list, for example, or were. And so it's really opened us up to a few ways to think about trees, less as individuals, though, of course, they are. And of course, that matters. But as a species, as a group that grows together, how they co-create together. Maybe there's some good lessons there for us.
Definitely there are good lessons for
Yeah.
us, and this is like a very different concept that they can actually communicate with one another. I mean, that is to me, when I first heard that years ago, I was like, oh my goodness, but it makes sense.
It makes
Absolutely
so
makes
much sense.
sense.
Yeah. And you know, as an herbalist, over time, I've experienced directly how both trees, plants, herbs can stand as teachers for us. And that's
Mhm.
just a lovely concept. They've been around longer than we have.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot of accumulated wisdom, ancestral wisdom, you might say, that can be leveraged by us. Wow. With that, we have so much more to talk about, but it's time for us to wrap up. So
Oh,
I know, is there anything else you'd like to say before we go to our wisdom practice?
yeah, I just would like to list the four pillars. I know we like to do this each
Oh, yeah.
podcast. And remember our four pillars, our touchstone is always Oceana and the way she lived her life and her teachings and what she taught us. And our own collective life wisdom as Crones, the interesting guests that we interview, and most importantly, are your responses. We're
Yeah.
creating a community. And if you go to twocronesandamicrophone.com, you're going to get more information from us. You have a chance to, you can post on social media, you can post on the website. We'll always respond to you. And don't forget, if you want to see our beautiful faces, you can go to the YouTube channel.
Yay. We love that we have that up now.
Yes, yes.
All
So,
right.
do you want to give us our wisdom practice, Linda?
Sure. So, as you know, every podcast we give a wisdom practice, which is a short, concrete practice for you to try in keeping with whatever we've been talking about in the podcast. And this time, it's about the spirit of the plants and the spirit of the plants showing up for us and to aid us. So, we want to invite you to walk outside or walk to a plant inside if it's one that you have that's a favorite and just listen. But ask an open ended question. What plant is calling to me? Sometimes our body knows before our mind knows. So if you find your feet are walking automatically in a certain direction, just let that go. See what happens. See who might be wanting to say, hey, hi. And don't worry if you think it might be a weed, because as an herbalist, I'm here to tell you those weeds are wise, wily, and wonderful.
Mhm.
So don't discount it. It happens to be a dandelion, for example, because dandelions are powerful beyond measure. They nourish us through their roots, their leaves, and their flowers, all with different healing purpose. So the wisdom practice is the spirit of the plants will sometimes show up to aid us. Listen and ask, what plant is calling to you?
Even if you're living in an apartment or a
Yes.
place where you can't plant a garden, remember, I lived in an apartment for, oh my God, at least 30 years before I got married. And yet I was still able to accomplish a lot of these practices. So don't let that stop you. All
That's
right.
right.
I
That's
want to
right.
give a special shout out to those who are supporting us, sending money every
Thank
month.
you.
We really appreciate the fact that you're doing that. And you will be getting little gifties from us. So keep your eyes open for that. And I guess on that note, I would say to you, we're helping you navigate the very muddy waters of our time. And we're looking forward to seeing you on our next podcast, which is going to be about Hildegard, who
Yay!
I can't wait to talk about. I'm so excited. I've been studying her for like 30 years. So
I love it. You are our
yeah,
resident subject matter expert on Hildegard, and we're so excited that we get to learn more about her and
yeah.
her amazing life
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And as a singer, I am familiar with her music because I've actually sung it in choral concerts, and it's extraordinary,
Yes.
still lively here in our century, more than 1,000 years later.
Yeah.
How many people have that happen? That's extraordinary. Oh, I do want to say too, remember, we also, if you go to our website, you can sign up for the free newsletter that comes out once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't signed up, What we do is it's a more in-depth look at whatever topics we're talking about for the given month. And it includes a variety of topics that we've talked about on our podcasts. So our May newsletter features frog as the harbinger of spring and the deepening of the spring planting season. And of course, we have blogs about beautiful blogs that Sally has written that are gorgeously illustrated, posted on our two crones and a microphone.com website. So back to our farewell for now. I want to invite you to go seek your glimmer. And if Sally were here, I know what she would say. Walk in beauty. Katie stay. All is made beautiful. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, if you're enjoying Two Crones and a Microphone, please like this video and hit the subscribe button. Enjoy timeless wisdom from modern times, all served up by women in the know.